Kao što je najavljeno u programu, ovaj panel ćemo imati na engleskom jeziku. Dobar dan, sad se lepo čujemo. Tako da ću ja preći na engleski, nadam se da je to ok za sve, ali s obzirom da imamo i neke govornike sa nama koji razumeju, ali možda ne pričaju tako dobro srpski, mislim da će biti lakše ako svi pričamo engleski. So, good afternoon, or almost good evening. My name is Neven Marinović. I am a director of an organization called Smart Collective, and I'm also proudly one of the supporters of the Green Art Incubator. So, first of all, I'd like to welcome you to the panel, and second of all, I also like to express my gratitude for taking the Friday afternoon to talk about the interrelations between art and environment and climate change, and for that we have I would say a really good panel of speakers. So I will just briefly present them and try to speak less as possible so that you can have more time with them. But some of the ground rules would be that, you know, we would also like this panel to be as much as possible a discussion. So please feel free to ask any questions. Please just signal me if you want to add anything into the discussion. So there is no need to wait for a formal time, you know, to open the questions to you. So, you know, if possible, let's keep it as much as possible as a dialogue, as interactive. So, as I said, my panelists today are Professor Milena Šešić, Professor Emeritus of the University of Arts of Belgrade, and also I'm having a little bit of stage fright because she was my professor as well. Also, on my right side is Mr. Antoine Avignon, who is the project manager for all the issues related to climate change and environment in the EU Delegation office here in Serbia, and Vladimir Đurđević, who is the name when it comes to climate change and environment, and professor at the Faculty of Physics here at the University of Belgrade. So I think we have really a good pool of experts from various sides, and that we can have a good discussion. So to start it, I would say let's start with you, Professor. So we have two professors, sorry. So saying a professor is not enough. With you, Professor Šešić. So somehow, you know, there has been really a lot of discussion about climate change recently. There are so many, I would say, on the highest possible level events, from, you know, political level events happening in Paris, Copenhagen, in Glasgow. So issues that we need to reach various targets when it comes to tackling climate change and these things. And also, I remember you have been teaching us the methodology of scientific work. So apologize for this, because this is not a scientific methodology, but when you insert climate change into Google, you get like 1.5 billion results. But somehow, you know, when you do the same with, you know, adding arts or, you know, doing something else and trying to research about climate change, environmental protection, and culture and arts, of course, there is much less results, but also most of the results are scholarly articles, are some kind of analysis. So there is not much happening, as you can see, on the political level. There is not much happening on a, let's say, more strategic level. So you know, I mean, maybe that's a too kind of a bold statement, but, you know, it seems that somehow, you know, the art has been somehow missed in this whole, you know, climate change, not only campaign, but movement, you know, discussion, you know. So is that true in your opinion? And, you know, how would you reflect on that?
Of course, it's very different from the region to region, because in the most developed regions, such as Scandinavia or UK, British Council, Art Council of UK, of England and Scotland and so on, they stimulate, they finance, they ask. In France also, city of Lyon, I think it was 15 years ago, maybe even more, that they proclaimed that they want to have a green city and that every cultural institution have to adapt on all levels. So starting with infrastructural work, starting with opera in Lyon, museums and so on. So after a few years, they proudly say, now we can say the complete cultural system, public but also independent and so on, in Lyon is green. That means it respects sustainability, circular economy and so on. But in countries like ours, also where this discussion is very much led through arts is the different countries of the global south that are mostly affected by, let's say, different sorts of investments, mining investments, plantations. For example, whole Indonesia is burning. The quality of air even in India is poor because of devastation of the farming territory, in fact, rainforest, making plantation in Indonesia. So artists, for example, in Indonesia are extremely active. They are producing a lot of works, participatory artist work with local communities, trying also to, in Brazil also, in many other countries where this issue is imminent. The most silent are in fact countries like ours that are facing that we were facing, or we thought we are facing much, let's say, more important issue, wars, nationalism, ethnic killings, ethnic cleansing, and so on. So in the 90s, that's the reason basically I wrote this book that I devoted to art of dissent in the 90s. I have only two small chapters that deals with some, let's say, activism related to nature. But Festival Šumes, what Božidar Mandić, Nel Antonović used to do, I'm speaking now about, let's say, 10, 15 years ago period and so on. But that was very, very few, because we thought we have, even, for example, when artists such as Oleg Novković, Milena Marković and so on were going to Majdanpek and Bor, they were not emotionally, how I'd say, threatened by total devastation of nature in this region, but by devastation of labor class, of working class. And that's also, how can I say, that's, yes, if we see that people are dying of hunger, of depression, if you go in Niš, in the settlement of electronic industry, where 1,000 people live in the same type of buildings that used to belong to electronic industry, and because it's not working, so same 2,000 people are not working, in total depression. Of course, then you tend to care more. So cultural solidarity and care exist here, but it's more linked to people and their situation than to reflection and the issues of overexploitation of natural resources was really somehow hidden. The issue of, for example, killing the natural resources by urbanist investment, by Chinese factories and so on. Even the president of state would say, what do you want? Do you want jobs or you want clean air? That was his response to the people saying that in Smederevo they cannot breathe anymore, and you see all these cars and everything covered with... So we can speak quite a lot, but I I wouldn't say that the issue is completely neglected, but it's silenced due to two things. One is poverty of the small people, common people that think they have other priorities, and on the other side, it silenced the topic by interest of neoliberal capitalism that wants territories for exploitation of lithium, of any kind of, and politicians that of course, are going to make even U-turn in the new, I don't know if people on Netflix, we can see the new season of Borgen, Danish serial. The oil is found on Greenland, so what we can do, should we keep the Eskimo population because we overuse the nature? Now when they have finally the chance to get rich, we are going to say no, and what we are going to decide about it. So if that can be a question in a rich, let's say, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and so on, because that's exactly, I will just and finish, I know I speak too much. For example, when I spoke with Sami people, Eskimo of the north of Norway, Sweden, and Finland, they are quite angry on their respective governments because governments limited numbers of, I don't know Irva's English word, reindeers that they can raise, because more than that would destroy nature. But they said they haven't forbidden more, I don't know, cows, pigs, and so on. It's only to us that this limit is put. So that means that we can never live and we can never have the lifestyle as the average Finn can have. They would use the argument, but this is the number of reindeers that you used to through generations your family has elevated. But yes, in 19th century everyone lived poorly, but now their children are looking how other Finns or Swedes are living. They would like to have also the same standard of life, not 19th century standard of life that they are obliged to. So it's a very difficult question how to balance development with preservation of nature and natural resources. And I think arts and culture are excellent tool to raise that as questions and to provoke all of us to think about it, because the answers are not simple and not cannot be just yes or no. It has many different nuances, and then these nuances can best be debated, discussed through different art and culture projects.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think also you raised a number of issues. One of those is why, in a way, this relation, this link is, in a way, to a certain extent, neglected. But also, I think you also raised the issue of how art and culture can play a huge role in actually reversing that, in actually making, the topics of the related to environment, climate change more important, more relevant. I would also argue that this is only one part of that. You can look at the cultural sector partly from the perspective of, or through the lenses of somebody who has a strong, I would say, influence on people, and who has the eye of the public in a way. Also, you can look at it from a strictly also sort of a technical perspective, and saying that the cultural industry is also a business industry, so it also contributes negatively to, it has some negative impact on the environment. So there, it also employs some people and, uses some resources. So there are various ways of how we can and how we must look at it. And this also brings me to, Antoine, to you, because the European Union has been really working a lot on various policies, I would say, but also strategies and also, I would say, measures that are put in place to kind of stimulate, on one hand, the economy to move towards a more circular, greener economy, which is less emitting less CO2 emissions, which is more kind of less negatively impactful on the environment. But also, you know, there has been a lot of effort put in place to raise awareness about various issues. So also citizens behave differently, and national governments, etc., etc. So this has brought us today to let's say that we have some of the quite developed mechanisms that would support various actors to move to a more circular economy. You have the EU Green Deal, you have the taxonomy. So, for example, if you're a business, you would, you know, you can see that there is a very strong benefit for you. You can see that there is actually, you would have to move into that direction, or otherwise in a few years it would be very difficult for you to operate, or you would need to move to Serbia where you would be allowed to operate still, as some factories that Professor Šešić mentioned. But somehow also, I mean, you know, to get back to my original question to Professor Šešić, somehow, you know, I think for the cultural and artistic sector, there is not such a strong, not only incentive, but also, you know, the push and the kind of, you know, the all the work that is being done with other sectors. So they can treat themselves as businesses and say, okay, you know, if there are some incentives or there is a push that I need to follow certain regulations, yes. But somehow it seems that also on the EU level, if I'm not mistaken, there is not such a strong link between climate change, emergency, and art and cultural sector. So, do you think, you know, that's maybe an overstatement, and also how it relates to our realities here? Yes.
I fully disagree.
Okay, please.
Yes. No. Now, first of all, yes. First of all, thanks for your question, and to the organizers for the invitation. Professor, on my left, you depicted, I think, very well where we are now, and the globalization of these issues, and also the fact that at the heart of this lies that environment protection and social protection is together. We cannot separate them. In my country, in France, they tried to do something for environmental protection, and then they had the gilets jaunes, the yellow jackets, because they didn't thought about the social consequences of a little tax on fuel, and it provoked ras-le-bol. It fueled riots because people had enough. So I think if we think that social issues, environmental issues, development issues are kind of separated and we treat them separately, we are completely wrong. And I would say the same for art and culture. It is not a silo approach that we should have, but it's, let's say, a comprehensive approach. Now, why I said I disagree, to be a bit provocative, it's because I think the EU recognized the importance of first of all, environmental protection as a development engine. So it's really, you mentioned the Green Deal, it's at the heart of the new growth strategy of the EU. We want to build a society that is fairer, more balanced, and respecting human rights and quality of air. The air we breathe, the water we drink is the fundamentals of this. So we have the all legislation, the tools, some financing. Some countries are more advanced, some are lagging a bit behind. But the many things, the EU helps the EU countries, the film producers to develop documentaries on nature. There are a lot of theaters. 40 years ago, I was in one of these theaters at primary school, and we were, you know, doing trees and protection of nature and singing, and it was all very nice. But that's also what I think you said. Somehow it's those generations that have been brought up, educated in a way that now those guys that are politicians, they they think environmental protection is a condition sine qua non. It's not something just to tick the box, or it's not something to be because you're ideologist, but it's much more mainstream. Now, of course, and I think, Gospodin, you mentioned this. You said on political ecology. This is the next thing, because to transform a society, you need the politicians or the member of municipal council. They don't necessarily have to be politicians all the time, but when you're elected and you take decision at the local level, if there is a parking to be built, if there is a forest to be destroyed, if there is betonization here and there, or if there is more green, like in Lyon or in Grenoble, that are the decisions that are made at the municipal level. And my point is, those generations, and it was also in Germany in the 70s, and we were discussing before we started how many French people left Paris in the 70s to go, we say in the province, but outside Paris, in order to have a better quality of life. And some who went to the municipalities took these decisions and are there in the political ecology, and they were inspired by René Dumont. In 1974, he made 1% at the French presidency elections, and 40 years later, you see that the Greens are much more powerful at the local level, and they are also able to send member of parliaments at the national parliament or the European Parliament, and that's a movement that. I mean, you can check it online. It's very interesting to see the story of these green political movements, how they emerged. And most of the time, they emerged because of one founding event. You know, you had the Larzac in the 70s in France, and the Germans had the fight against the nuclear. Well, now maybe they go back to coal because they don't have nuclear, and they are trying to find how to not buy Russian gas, but that's for another discussion. The German Greens in the 70s and the 80s were very powerful against the nuke, and it brought up an entire generation of people caring about the nature, going biking, recycling as much as they could, trying to buy less packaging. Well, for the Western Balkans, or ex-Yugoslavia, or specifically now in Serbia, I think in some point of your history you were there too. You know, there was a lot of consciousness on this, and green points, and somehow the 90s maybe, and then, as you mentioned, some forces of development were too strong, and they kind of bulldozer of wrapping everything. So it's what's important in the environmental consciousness is that it starts with the young people, but also the people who have been in this demonstration last year in the streets for air quality and for lithium, have this sense of the sense of emergency is one thing, but also the sense that their voice should be heard. That's at the basis of democracy. And with professor on my right, I'm surrounded by professors.
I'm also on left, but right now I'm also on left, but right now I'm on right.
So you're in the center of something.
Center left.
Center left. And we were discussing about urban planning. Urban planning is at the moment where in a city, in a region, things start to be serious, putting in paper, and where debates should happen. And to come to public consultation and public participation in most of the cities in France, at least in mine, I know every time there's a change in the urban planning or urban plan, there's a huge discussion. And of course, you cannot have three French people agreeing together, but there are a lot of debates, and then there's a vote. And again, municipal councillors vote, and we elect the municipal councillors. So if they are representing of, let's say, centre left, on my right, then this voice is heard. And that's the political game, and that's the democratic game. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for disagreeing, although during your speech you didn't disagree that much. So, I'll give you another chance to, to disagree more. To the person on the right, also known as Professor Đurđević, I would also like to first apologize that I mentioned that I said that you were Đurić, which you're not.
It's not a problem, it's a common mistake, but by many people.
I guess it's a common mistake. Yeah. So basically, so from your perspective, I think somebody who's been dealing a lot with climate change as an issue. Probably, most of the analysis and most of the discussion has been around, the energy sector and its contribution to climate change, or the transportation industry, or the aviation industry, or, so agriculture and these things. And I guess, culture also was not there in the early debate, I guess. But still, you're here with the, and, one of the pillars of the Green Art Incubator. So, can we hear your take on the relationship, and how do you think that these two are interconnected and need to be interconnected?
I was surprised like a few years ago when I maybe started to try to look into the artists from the West, especially from the United States, what they talking about the climate change and things like that. And I was surprised about the technical level they are talking about, because Joanna mentioned that we had this interview with Josh Fox, and sometimes during his interviews when he talk about the climate change, the technical level of his explanation of the problem is so high. It's like a natural scientist, not director. And I think that is also very important part in this world of the art, to understand these technical issues about this. A few weeks ago we had this event, what was happened on Roland Garros. The girl goes out, stop the match, they switch her head to the net, and she had during the Roland Garros semi-final, so she somehow switched she's neck to the net, and she had a T-shirt with the title "The Only 1,028 Days Left," and it only 1,028 days left. And many people asked, what is 1,028 days? And it was a message that we only have these 1,028 days to act about climate change. So she was a climate change activist. And in that sense, many kind of these numbers and information sometimes is really important to send a message, and the people who are working in this sector of art, and also the activists who are close to the art. I think that it's very important to have this technical level of knowledge. I mean, the message that she's sent by that T-shirt, it was really, if you look how much time we left to do something about the climate change in terms, because right now we really need a strong U-turn in terms of emissions. We need to reduce our emissions something like a 5% per year if we want to limit the global temperature to 2 degrees. In that sense, we really have something like 3 years to see that we doing this U-turn, because right now we are somehow on some kind of plateau of emissions, but we need to start it to reduce them. During this COVID year, we reduced them like a 6%, but that was due to the COVID. So in sense, if you want to have Paris Agreement on table, like something what was happened, in that sense you should have this COVID year by year every year to reduce 6%. So let's return to the scene of artists. So I see that many artists today really have this kind of technical level about this issue, and I think it's very important that they also speak on that technical level, and to send message by numbers and by something which is really how to say, like some real things, that's something that you can sense. Also, there is example of we will be able to see these presentations in after this panel that was prepared by Mirko Nikolić. He's artist from Serbia, but right now he's in Stockholm. I mean, he's not artist. He's somewhere between artist, activist, and scientist, because many of his work is really developed by scientific papers and the numbers from the scientific papers. Also, he's a part of the group who really deal on things like extraction of metals and things like that. And in that sense, they are activist group. They send many almost policy papers to COP meetings in Copenhagen, to different governments. And again, by the end of the day, he's artist. He has exhibitions and he has organized these different artistic events and performances and things like that. So in that sense, I see that in the field of the art, there is maybe some kind of move that artists become a little bit more maybe scientists, and I think that it is also very important to have that. So that is my feeling about this issue. But in terms of institution, I think that's for me is the major part of this project, Green Art Incubator. In terms of institution, I also see there is some kind of change or move that we have, that institutions would like to be more green in terms of how they are working, how they are organized. Because we already have some kind of setup in our brains that if you go to the museum or if you go to the theater, you go to some special place, not everyday place, some kind of better face of our society. And if you go there and you see messages that we decide to change something because we think this is very important, if you saw that kind of message there, I think it's very important for people to feel that kind of support. That if they also feel that should be changed, maybe that can encourage them that, yes, you are right, we should change our society. And I saw that message in the institution, which have special, let's say, place in our heads, because it's some kind of collective understanding of the world. Okay, the theater is not just a theater place where you have some kind of play. When you said theater, it's some kind of special, you have some kind of special figure in your head. So in that sense, I think that not only the artists should be close to these topics in this sense, which is happening, but also that the institutions should send some kind of strong messages. Also, as I said in the beginning, the issue is really complex, and there is super hard questions. For example, this story about the lithium in Serbia. We have the strongest protest in Serbia was related to the lithium, okay? But if we don't want lithium in Serbia, where are we going to get that lithium? From which country? Is it okay to go into another country and to open the lithium mine? So the whole issue is global, and the questions are so hard that we really need to have as much as allies that we can find. Okay, so we really need to find, to make strong community, which should, first of all, which should start really seriously think about all these complex issues and situations if we want to have some kind of, let's say, safe world in the future. Again, by the end of the day, this question is a question about future generations, and right now they don't have a voice to talk about that, except this Fridays for Future. Okay, they're kids, they cannot vote, they cannot choose the politicians, they cannot implement policies. Okay, maybe if we ask kids, maybe they will be more encouraged to implement some strong policies instead of us. So in that sense, I think that for our generations, it's very important to give them some kind of support in terms of that, and to think about these all things, not only how we're gonna finish our lives, but how somebody will live in the future. And I will finish with this because European Union. I think that what is different in Serbia and European Union on this topic is that when you have policy document in European Union, that document always is followed by some kind of strong message that everybody can understand. Okay, so you always behind these policy documents, which can be technical and with many details, you always have some strong message. We want to do this and this with this document. Okay, we're gonna read later about these technical issues, but there is a message. Right now, European Union have this Repower Europe initiative, which is some kind of extension on Green Deal, and they send it's a one and a half paper, okay, but with very strong messages. Like inside the paper, you will see we're gonna install like a 600 gigawatts of solar power up to 2030. The Serbia, for other, the Serbia have total installed energy power is 7 gigawatts. So in the next 8 years, they're going to install 85 Serbias just in solar, okay? And that's the message they send you, okay? Maybe it's a little bit overestimated, maybe it's not, but the message they send you, we wanted to do this, okay? Behind this, there is some kind of analysis, etc. And something which we are missing about our policy documents in many sectors is that we never have these kind of messages, okay? You have some law, or you have this, let's say, the example is the air quality plan for the Belgrade, okay? There is no message behind the document, okay? They will tell you, okay, we have like a 143 measures to improve air quality. Okay, but who cares? We have 143 like for 20 years and the air is clear, okay? In front of that document should be, okay, we don't want 5,000 people die because of bad air in Belgrade. We want to reduce that number by half in the next 5 years. That's a strong message. And we never have that kind. In that sense, maybe this crazy joint action between physics and arts, maybe we're gonna be able to create that kind of message in the future, that what we want by these policies. Not that we're gonna implement as much as policies we want, but we want to have these kind of messages to the people, that people can easily understand what we want.
Thank you so much. Do we have some first questions for the distinguished panelists, please? Yes.
One question that bothers me for a long time, that is that all the ecological movements, particularly related to climate change, are related to big cities like Belgrade, Novi Sad. So my question would be how art and culture can help bring climate change on the local level, on the village level, for example, because we have only those ecological movements in those smaller municipalities when there is some issue that is happening. But it's not related to climate change. It's either related to lithium or, I don't know, like roads, exceptional roads.
Dams.
So it's dams, so it's a specific problem. And we don't have a problem of climate change. But the people that live in villages that depend on agriculture mostly will be affected by climate change. A lot, yeah. So
but they are not the ones who produce the most negative.
Yes.
For they have, I mean, it's a urban population that have to be educated to change, to stop flying, to go to Novi Sad by train. That's what my husband told me today. Why you are going by car? So I just said a good excuse, I don't know where is the railway station. Okay, but basically urban population have to change behavior so that there is no such, climate change that affect, like yesterday, Lučani, Guča, what was totally destroyed, agriculture because of tempest and so on. It's very difficult. Art and culture are far from our villages since 80s. Basically, when many different cultural actions, even the word cultural action or animation socioculturelle, it stopped to be used in 80s, and programs, both public and independent. For example, Selu Pohode, going to villages, it was independent action organized by Zoran Radmilović and actors and so on. Okay, they get cars, the camions to transport themselves and so on, but basically it was independent initiative. Public radio and television, they had a lot of initiatives to support art and culture, libraries in villages and so on. But houses of culture collapsed already in 80s, and now You might have some individual actions of artists going to villages, to nature, and so on, but it never can be systemic to cover thousands of basically dying villages in Serbia. When we did, by the way, Eco Center, which used to exist in the 80s, was situated in Institute for Cultural Development. And of course, it doesn't exist anymore because the Institute of Cultural Development a long time ago stopped a loving idea to have Eco Center as NGO within their premises, although they developed quite a lot of good projects together. So we made an analysis of rural culture and what's going on. And it was so before the war, before the transition, before everything that happened in the 90s, our villages have been dying, basically, depopulating, because there was no aménagement de territoire. There was nobody who really cared to think about differences. So differences, regional differences, because mountain village has different priorities than the village in the valley and so on. So I don't think that art and culture as such can be the right response. It needs much more solid agricultural policies, well-thought agricultural policies, and just to usually make criticism on European Union, I will now just make criticism on the biggest United Nations agricultural program in 50s. They selected in 50s from 7 republics, villages competed which one is going to have developmental aid. The village that got was Jarmenovci here in Serbia. 30,000 cherry trees was given to peasants, among other things. Peasants didn't understand the concept of the plantation. They said, but we have few cherry trees, we have few apple trees, we have this. We don't want 30,000. What we are going to do, to whom? But they were right. To whom they are going to sell those cherries in 50s? There was no market, no distribution system, no nothing. They got factory in the village. Everyone from every family got a job in the factory. Agricultural transmission of products. Everything collapsed already in 80s, already in 70s it collapsed. Hotel, to develop local tourism. Everyone had salary in a factory. They stopped agricultural production. Food has to be for the factory imported from Macedonia and so on. So we looked how, exactly because of developmental effort, one village culture was totally ruined. I can speak about that in details, but we don't have time for that. So I don't like idea of developmental ideas coming from us, citizens, going to villages and we have a great idea, cultural tourism, this and that. It has to be participative process that doesn't exist here in Serbia on any level, on any issue, and so on. We used to have self-government. Yesterday, by the way, a few days ago, Sonja Jeuković made a fantastic article in Danas journal about how it worked or not worked, self-governance in the theater. But how they debated and so on. Now there is no debate. She would say at the end, the director word was the most, but they had chance to discuss about repertory, about everything. So I think maybe to come back to participative models of discussion, governance, and so on.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, because I think, it also, anybody else wanted to ask something?
I also have another question, but I can't.
No, please.
No, I have from the political side.
Okay.
So we have a green party.
For whom is your question? For everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a green political side, but we also had the medium protesters and everything, and they were also at the local level. So the Green Party from Belgrade went there, and then they
organized or...
Yeah, they were participants of the broadcast, and they were talking with people and stuff. And when the parliamentary elections came, they only got 2 votes. Not 2%, but only 2 votes from that village. But they were like a Green Party, they worked with them. So the Green Party had most success actually in Belgrade. So that is something...
That is also another paradox, in a way.
That is because they went on the field, but I think that they are not going enough for people to know who they are. So when they show up, I think people are just, oh, they're just another participant. They're not a political actor. They're just like a participant. They're a supporter of the protest, and that is why I think the Green Party here is still small, and it still only affects. I would be strict and say only like major municipalities of Belgrade, not even like peripheral municipalities. I don't know if
Thanks.
that's a question or a statement.
Well,
or
if anybody wants to comment on this, feel free.
I can agree. I think it's one of the interesting topic in Serbia to follow this Green Party developments, because we are on the beginning on that. And I think that maybe we can also go a little bit back to look into the Europe, or maybe into the United States, and the development of these green ideas and interaction with politics, but by time. And I think that right now we are on this beginning stage. Okay, so the real Green Party and real green policies we can expect, I mean, in time of 10 years in the future. Right now we are still trying to establish that kind of issue as a political issue in terms, I mean, the real political issue in terms of the parliament and the different actors in parliament. Because it's one thing that you raise some question, and another thing that you have people in parliament who are advocating for that question and to try to do something. And I think that we are still on this developing phase of all that story, and that's the reason why it's so confusing right now. People don't understand what is happening. But probably in the future the things will be a little bit more shaped and become more clear, like the example for the Germany, when the Green Party is one of the strongest in the Germany, and also they have a very strong influence in the European Parliament, etc. But it took for them it took like 30 years probably to achieve that kind of political impact. So it's not easy, and it's a process like others. But we are I think that we are just on the beginning of that process. Also, all this kind of, I talked with guys from Zagreb who took the municipality parliament in Zagreb from not Moramo but Možemo coalition, okay? And what happened to them? They were an activist group, okay? And then they switched to the party, similar like here, okay? And then they took the many seats in city assembly, okay? And in that moment, so most of them who had their brains trained to be activists must to switch to political brains. It's not the same, okay? It's totally not the same. So some of them decide to reformat their brains from activist brains to this political brains. But what was happened then? The activist part of the group was degraded in terms of number of people who are there. Okay, so for them it was become challenging to organize different events, to motivate people, etc. So the activist part of this of that society lose because some people go to politics. Okay, so now you need to rebuild all this activist structure because many of your friends left you and become the politicians, which is not the same. And also it's tricky when you have the activist part and then some of you go to the parliament. Now you should confront each other and you'll be friend like a few days ago, or you'll be close a few days ago. So it's not easy to create this kind of transition from the activism to the politics. And currently in Serbia it's still some kind of gray zone, and that's the reason why we have this kind of unclear situation right now.
Yeah, I would say politics is in the gray zone, not activism. You wanted to add something, Anton?
One note on this. I'm in the regions in the Balkans since some years now, and sometimes I see some activists, they want to go and start political career, and then they think twice because they think they're going to lose their friends, their families, and then they're going to be under so much pressure. And some try, and some stop because they see that it's too complicated, it's too hard, and then they will lose their ideas, and they will lose what they believe in because they can't bear with the rest. It's of course a difficult choice, but it must be done in one moment. And also, what I wanted to say is, being an environmentalist, an ecologist in a municipality is not a guarantee of success. It doesn't make you a good manager. It doesn't make you a good elected person. And you have to prove yourself, whatever is your political color. There are, in a municipality, in a region, when we talk about development, there are so many contradictions to support the economy, to pay the budgets to the elders, or to build a new school. There are decisions to be made every day that are difficult, and no one has the perfect solution. But it's true. It's an interesting moment in history here to see the, let's say, political development of environment, ecology, political ecology. They are quite incredible examples in Zagreb and also in Montenegro. I think this has not been seen the last 3 years. So something is changing. I visited Tirana as well. I know it's not part of ex-Yugoslavia, and you don't have a lot of information about Albania, but things are changing there also a lot. Bike lanes, recycling, eco-fashion shows with dresses made of recycling stuff. People talking about, not only talking about environment, but also demonstrating against companies, against pollution. Recently they won, I don't know if you heard about the Vjosa River. It starts in Greece, called the Aus in Greece, and it flows through Albania. It's Vjosa. It's not dam. There's no dam on it, so they say it's the last virgin river of entire Europe continent. And after 10, 12 years of fighting, the government declared it as a national park, and it's the first time. I think we don't have even this in let's say in the EU. In 27 member states, we don't have a river that is declared a park, and a protected area as a river. We have mountains, we have plains, but we don't have a river as such from where the way it flows. So this is quite remarkable, and it didn't happen by itself. It happened because the friends of Eco Albania, plus many others, supported the villagers who were seeing that the construction of hydropowers would destroy their irrigation systems, would destroy the river flow and so on. So yeah, there's no battle you can win without a fight, and one place to fight is in a democratic way, is through the elections, of course, and through the debates. And I think open society, more debates is sometimes needed. Access to information, to TV, is also very important. As a French, I can tell you that we are always in the streets, but sometimes to demonstrate. But sometimes it's not. I mean, there are a lot of debates also there, but sometimes it's really let's. I'm always asked what to do about environment in my city, and I say, like, look, first thing, write to your deputy, write to your mayor, contact them, push them, individually or collectively if you have an association but push them, make them accountable.
But just now, I just exactly on that level want to say why, to respond to her question directly, why the people from Gornje Nedeljice have not voted for the Green Party. Because if you in a village vote for any opposition party, your village is that village. Every money is come from above. There is no municipality who has their own money. There was only 3 opposition cities. They were killed, asphyxiated. Big Parachin was, if there was no help from EU, they would be dead anyway. So our peasants are not very stupid. They usually say, we are going to vote for you when you win. And when you are on the central power, and then we are going locally to vote for you, then you are going to help us. Now they are very, unfortunately, we have not a democratic system. And even, from Belgrade municipalities, they've been deprived of their property. What belonged to the municipality of New Belgrade, Vračar, Stari Grad, and so on. For example, University of Art, which is located on the Stari Grad, we used to have a huge help from municipality Stari Grad. Then it just stopped because the city of Belgrade took everything from municipalities and so on. So you don't know who is your local politician, whom to address, and it's obviously that your local politicians get idea from above that dirty jobs are more important than any kind of eco and so on. So we still have to fight, I totally agree. But on all levels, on local level, but also on central level, and we have to put and to demand agenda. But for that, we don't need only arts and culture. We need a lot more of researchers, but not of their articles published in academic journals that no one can read. Usually they publish in English, like I am publishing also in English. So we need really to be published in daily press, to go on television, to make programs. We don't have, for example, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was totally surprised. On the radio television Serbia was a film about this Albanian defense of this river. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, who can watch this movie? And I was really...
You can watch this one.
Yeah, but I was really impressed that
tell us about the movie.
someone on radio television Serbia translated this movie, and put it on the repertory. However, that was a brave decision, because it was not only about Albania, it was about throughout the region, how the ecolo activists are protecting rivers and so on. So we need also more media linked to this and more attention anyway.
Yeah, I need to take the mic back because I'm feeling a bit redundant, like they don't need me here on this on this panel. But we're gonna take 2 more questions, but and as well also let me just ask you to think about like some kind of final remarks at the end. So definitely a lot of things have been mentioned, and I think what you said about making the balance between the development and the environment, and I think all of the examples that you use basically are in that area, So, we do not want lithium here, but, let it be produced somewhere else because we are not getting rid of our phones or, whatever. And so, please think about how basically we can, refer this within the cultural scene and with the artistic scene. So in terms of, whether we need... what would be needed to happen in the next 5 years so that we have a better synergy between these two? Is it policies? Is it, more activism? Is it more concrete measures of support? Is it more, actions? So this is a thing just for you to think, so I don't jump on you with that. And please, we had a question here.
Yes, I asked the performers that we did a couple of times, dancing trees that I was talking about. We had in the audience one nuclear physicist, and the person said that yes, I think the art, in this case performing arts, is a much better way to talk to the people, because we sometimes been talking codes and who understand the numbers, as you said. Also, then we had a child, the daughter of one spectator, and she said, "Okay, Mom, if some government allowed us or not. So we were trying to move the people, do your part. The times will change, sooner or later or whatever. Like, as you said, I was growing up we were recycling newspapers and bottles. And so you come to the time and said, what is a big deal in recycling? And now today I'm recycling at home and then I'm throwing in the common garden. Yes, I'm doing whatever and I say, why I'm doing this, but I don't know. Well, but anyhow, I want to reflect that anyhow culture and art has maybe in our local society the goal of to keep the certain continuity of the values, of the attitude, of civil behavior, attitude, and maybe to encourage people to demand what we don't have now, and we know how difficult it is, and some people had better experience. Some young grow up and said, it will be forever like this. We have a lot of young artists coming, they said, it's easy for you, because you witness better time, and now you think like, I said, but for us it's very difficult, we always live, we are born in 90s, so we always lived crisis, and we cannot imagine that things will change. So of course there are all these complex level, and we are very aware, but I think art and culture, it is a good and powerful tool to give energy and to encourage people to educate if you want, but not to be educational, to stay in the art, but to know that it can move people to do something and maybe to change the attitude, and maybe, as you said,
Thank you. So let's have another question and comment, and if you want to reflect on both, please.
Yeah, so I remember these campaigns when Starapana was the case. And I remember some of the performances that they were like very ethno, very kind of like pure, like bathing in the river. And the narrative was this land is the land of our ancestors, and basically their blood is in this soil. It had certain kind of like nationalistic ethno elements. So I got a little bit worried about this kind of connection between eco art, drawing on very much narrative which is like blood and soil, how to say. So I'm just wondering what is your take on this kind of like tendencies and about this connection between like eco-fascism, eco-Nazism, I don't know which one you prefer. So yeah, especially because in Serbia, for example, this discourse is really, even when people start getting very active, like they did when the air pollution was the case, at certain points they actually turned against Roma people who are very marginalized here, racialized, and the narrative was really racist. And these are very civil, educated, big city, urban people who are very aware of environmental issues. So I'm just like a little bit puzzled about these intersections.
Anyone wants to comment about environment and right wing?
Yeah, maybe I can say something.
Because you're on the right.
Yeah, I'm on the right.
Right.
Like eco-nationalist. In the world, I mean, these eco-terrorists and eco-mujahidins or something, these terms are mainly put in a public arena by fossil fuels companies. Okay, they try to make anyone who is thinking about environment or climate change, they won't make a picture of him or she as an extremist. Okay, like this is the extremist, and the people are afraid of terrorists or extremists. In that sense, they try to make this bad picture. In case of Serbia, it's it's not the same case, of course. But what I was thinking what was in my mind when you put this question? Okay, one of the stories that I tell when I talk about the climate change is that you have some window of time during which you can do something, okay, with staying out of this risky zone, okay. If this window starts to be smaller and smaller, then you can expect more friction and more unstable situation, okay? Because people will understand we need to do something, but we don't have time to do it, okay? So we're gonna do anything what is in front of us. Any tool that we have, we're going to use it, okay? And in that case, when everybody is capable to do anything just to save their lives or their property or their crops or everything, the people will be in the position that they can do potentially bad things and to turn the whole story in something which is nationalism or racism or things like that. So in that sense, starting to talk before that small window, much before that small window, we're going to reduce potentially risk that all this environmental story have this kind of non-expected, nice faces. Let's say that in that way. So that's the reason why we should start to talk much before that happened, that situations become critical. Because in terms of climate change, what's going to happen in the future? You're going to have more droughts, you're going to have more storms, you're going to have more floods. And in the people who are living, let's say, in village, they will realize they are not capable to produce enough food, they will have reduced water resources, etc. In that moment, people can really start to think about of some extreme move to protect themselves. So that is the reason why it's very important to stay away from these scenarios and to stay in the situation when you still have some kind of stable, on the first place, natural system, and then from the natural system you have stable social system, okay? So
it's very important what you mentioned, to have the science and the facts and the technical knowledge behind of all of this, so you cannot say it's the Roma or it's these guys or it's these guys, but we need to have the clear science and facts and information to the people what is causing this and who is causing this, so we don't play the blame game. And I would also let you, but please also just put your final remarks into what you're saying, because we need to wrap up slowly.
If you done things right now, you will be in a better position to avoid this kind of extreme situations in the future, as the one you explained. Okay, so now it's some kind you can observe that, but it's not a rule still. Okay, but in the future, if you have this kind of strong friction because people feel so much bigger pressure from the environment, then something which is exception can become rule in the future. So we want to avoid the rule acting now, not in the moment when we are under big stress. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to act on climate change much before these critical situations. And in case of climate change, it's 2 degrees. Okay, so we need to act now to have 2 degrees in 30 years. In 30 years, we will not be able to have this 2 degrees target. Racism, sure. Okay.
Have to take also to take much more awareness about it, because in the present moment they are using rhetorics of nationalism, thinking that this rhetoric can be understandable because we are living, and that's unfortunately true. On the other side, this rhetoric of nationalism is reinforced not by climate change. They don't think about this it's usually, when you mention Stara Planina or any of this, it's local interventions in nature. And that provokes what we can call a local patriotism, which is nothing negative in itself, but yes, it becomes negative if it starts mentioning our bones of our ancestors, blood, and so on. Yeah, but this is unfortunately rhetorics even of the young generation. They grew up with this rhetorics in 90s. That's what they have heard. So it became standard rhetorics of the, let's say, generation that should be the most active generation. So to conclude, because we have to conclude, I think, thank you very much for raising this issue, because we always claim that Serbia is not racist, that we never have been racist, that there is no anti-Semitism, but there is a huge anti-Semitism, there is anti-Tsiganism also huge, that is not even covered, because people don't really care, and they think still that political correctness is something stupid, and that why not to make jokes about Roma and so on, etc. Political correctness, when it is going to the edge, might be really something too much, but I think in Serbia we are so far of that. Of any kind of civilized discussion in the public space, that we should fight for that. And ecological movement, cultural movement, political movement, all of that has to be joined, and to take attention that both global issues that are not, I mean, most of the people that are on the streets, you look also, I even laughed yesterday reading titles in newspapers that strike of the factory, car factory in Kragujevac is going to be beginning of workers' movement. No, every factory is striking only for themselves. Every village is striking only if the dam is going to be built in their village. There is no solidarity, there is no across, and that's something new, I think, that we have to build up, that we have to build certain consciousness that processes are larger than what's going on in my village, and that processes are global. And yes, we don't want to be the dam spot. What is deponia word? Okay, landfill sounds nice. Landfill, okay. Deponia is where you put garbage, yeah, okay. So that we don't want to be landfill of the Europe. Because, however, in Albania, although you can see really universities are better and better, students are better and better, but they are getting some money of accepting garbage from Europe. That's a fact, because that's one of the biggest problems of all of us, what to do with garbage, so that we are producing quite a lot. Anyway, I think that we need more solidarity, more common and joint action, and overpassing this idea, I care only if it is in my courtyard, so I'm fighting for the 5th park or for block 37 in New Belgrade, but it's too far away to go to, I don't know, Barareva or somewhere else, still in Belgrade, because it's not nearby my home. Okay. Yes.
Yes, it's an interesting question, this eco-fascism, but maybe it's the proof that environment goes across the political range, and that it's also a concern for whatever is your political affiliation. And we also have this in France, in my country. We have some small minority that is very soil and territory and defense of the environment, because, you know, it's kind of white purity, whatever. I don't even understand how they can, but whatever. It's the thing is, there were elections last Sunday in France, and this Front National, or whatever they call themselves, Rassemblement National now, this ersatz of fascists and Nazists. They got 89 members in parliament. They are people that I know that vote for them. Before I didn't know anyone who voted for them. Now they are, let's say, normal people. Not people with svatiskas that vote for them. They are normal people, and so it's more of a political discussion. It's not really my field, but there's this transformation of society in Europe where these right parties, these illiberal parties, are getting traction politically, and they embrace environmental, climate things for opportunistic reasons, for voting reasons, but also sometimes because there are people who would vote for them because everyone is, this NIMBY factor, this not in my backyard theory, that everyone agrees for lithium, but not in my backyard. Everyone agrees for a nice factory with employment, but not in my backyard. Everyone wants development, and it will bring pollution, but not in my backyard, not here, not there. So yeah, it's okay if it's in China because we can close an eye, and poor children there will continue to die of pollution because it's too far away. But so the thing you said, this professor, you said, what do we want if we want to continue to have lithium? And yes, lithium cannot be extracted without pollution. So it has a cost to pay. But maybe you don't want it, and that's fine. Then there are alternatives. But to come back on the racism, I think I see it in the Balkans with the Roma population when sometimes in the municipalities or in the discussion we say we need to talk about solid waste management and so the kazan, the trash, and everything, and people come to say, but there's nothing we can do with these people. They will always come to the trash, and they will always take the things out of the trash. They will never understand and everything. And we have some programs. We work with NGOs to help the vulnerables of the Roma population, because we believe that no one wants to go to the trash to pick it up in the morning or in the middle of the night. No one. The Roma population are vulnerable and vulnerabilized, and one of the things that is left to be done in a society is to pick up the trash and sell it somewhere else. It's not that they like to do that much, And we have asked the question, I have asked the question, and most of them told me, well, we do this because what else to do, But then it's also a difficult question when you want to send them to it's tricky. Sometimes we go to the waste pickers and we say, look, what about if instead of going around the street with your motorbike, we will give you a job at Deponia, where you would do this, but with a uniform, with a salary, monthly contract, with a yearly contract and everything, and you will work in the chain to sort the waste, the recyclables here, the things there. And usually after 2-3 days, they disappear. They don't stay. And I'm thinking, well, maybe waste recycling, sorting was not their thing at the end of the day, and maybe biking is the best thing to be done. There is no one solution there, but you're absolutely right. Racism, xenophobia, or anything else is nothing to do with the green movement. It's nothing to do with the green movement. Absolutely not.
I think we can come a long way from starting with arts and culture and production, and coming to racism and xenophobia. So I think, it only proves how kind of big and interdisciplinary the topic is. And I also think that we definitely need to close the session down. So before I hand it to Đura for some additional information, just let me just try to kind of summarize some of the things that we have discussed. I think there is definitely a positive trend of environment becoming a topic. So people are much more aware of it than 10, 15 years ago. It has some negative consequences because there is also greenwashing, because then also some right-wing movements use it as a narrative, but definitely due to all of the things that have been happening, it's also something that is becoming integrated into the cultural and arts scene, obviously, not only as a tool where the arts and culture uses its voice to promote it, to raise awareness, but also it's being integrated into the very kind of a business of culture and to the very operations of it. So I think that's a great thing. And also the cultural scene there can actually play a huge role, I think, in what you were all mentioning, which is this participatory dialogue, which is more than needed, because there is always some kind of balance to make, and as we heard, there is a strong emergency. So this balance needs to be made yesterday, not tomorrow, not in 5 years. There also needs to be several, I would say, measures developed. So we need to kind of work with the actors, because, as you said, there is technical knowledge, but there is also a set of recommendations, things, and support that we can provide to the actors in the cultural scene, on how to basically better interact and better engage with this whole issue of environmental change and environmental impact. And finally, I liked also what you said about physics and art. So if we have nuclear physics, we can have artistic physics at some point as a new subject. So with that, I would really like to thank you all for the participation. I would like you to thank our panelists with an applause, because I think they deserve it. Unfortunately, I think we opened up more topics than we closed. So, but definitely, I'm looking at the organizers here, so that they kind of have a promise that they're going to get us again and to continue this discussion. And then,
one of our goals as Green Art Incubator is to open many questions. So I think in that sense, this was very good discussion right now.
It's still the incubation phase.
Yeah, it's incubation phase. Okay, so I would ask you to stay on your position for a few minutes, just to set up this video about this post-fossil fuel society organization in Finland, Mustarinda House. It's very interesting. It's extreme example how far can artists can go in terms how they produce energy, use materials, use resources, etc. But I think that it can be very inspirational for you to see how far artists can go there. It's residential house, so maybe if we have artists here, and I know that we have, maybe you can think about to maybe visit the Mustarinda House. But it will take just a few minutes to set up the Zoom. So please don't leave your seats. You can talk, you can chat, but it will start in a few minutes. And of course, after the Mustarinda, we're gonna have a drink and cocktail. Okay.
I'll just share my screen right now, and then I'll stop the video, because here at the house it's in quite a remote area, and so our connection is not always so stable. So to make this as smooth as possible.
Yeah, let's start videos. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm here at the Mustarinda House. I've been a part of Mustarinda Association for the last 6 years, and I originally did the residency in 2016, and became really interested in how the Mustarinda Association, as a kind of infrastructure for all of this ecological post-fossil kind of research and practices go, as well as the actual house itself as a site for kind of enacting all of these things, as well as supporting more creative practices. And I'm currently here for a month to kind of care for the house and all of the systems that are here, as well as help to facilitate the artists and researchers that we have that are currently in residence. So what is Musterinde? The Musterinde Association is founded in 2010, so it's 12 years old now. It's a group of artists and researchers, educators and activists who are kind of collectively working together under this umbrella with this common goal of promoting ecological rebuilding of society. And it's done through the connection between arts and sciences and through diversity in culture and nature. And there are around 10 to 15 active members who make up the board and the group of people who will care for the house and program the residency, as well as carry out other parts of this really multi-limbed entity that is the Musterinde Association, that we kind of work through like wider education activities, exhibitions, lectures, talks. Like it covers such a broad range that it's really this tentacular being that has a limb in many different fields. And so under that, like out of those 10 to 15, there's this wider group of about 39 members who all are in some way associated and working with these common themes as well. And the goal of all of this is to experiment and explore and work towards ways of transitioning to a post-fossil culture. And the house itself acts as kind of a real testing ground for all of these ways of not only making art or kind of carrying out research or education activities, but also as a way of kind of sustainably managing life that surrounds all of these. So the house itself is located in eastern Finland, in the Kainu region, which is it's roughly the size of Belgium, but it has a population density of about 3.5 people per square kilometer. So it's quite sparsely populated. It's about 628 kilometers from Helsinki, and the closest town is Hyrinsalmi, which is about 25 kilometers away. So it's in quite a remote location. And
the house used to be a village school, right?
Yes, yeah. It was kind of the schoolhouse for this municipal catchment area, and it was that. And then when that closed, when the school became, I think, more centralized in Kajaani and like the closest larger city, the house then became a rehab center for teenagers. And then it became a residency. And this experiment that it is at the moment. And the house itself is kind of this focal point for a lot of the activities of Musterinde. You can see in the kind of diagram here that the house is kind of the grounding point for all of these things, and it operates through the association board and the house group, who are there for like the more hands-on practical things, such as maintaining all of the systems that are here. And then these groups also work with like more nature conservation projects, hosting events, lectures, doing courses and workshops, both kind of with Musterinde members and also inviting people from outside, and educators, environmental activists, a wide range of guests. And we also have an exhibition program that we run yearly, and publication, both of which we'll come to later. Yeah, but the house itself is really this testing ground for trying to find a sustainable way of being. And the residency program, which is hosted at the house, hosts between 40 and 70 residents a year. And those residents are kind of made up of artists, researchers, writers, activists, makers, thinkers, educators that are working both individually and in groups. We also try and like have space for those with caregiving responsibilities as well, so that it's open to as wide a range of influences as possible, and both to receive and to give. And this open call is curated through like yearly, and the next one coming up for 2023 will be announced in the September of this year. So you can keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure that Mirko will share all of the details when the time comes.
Yep.
And yeah, so we have monthly in the house, we have kind of anywhere between 7 and 12 residents at a time. And these are spread over the 7 writers' rooms, and we have 5 different studios for more studio-based or process-based practices. Yeah, and these we try and kind of curate as wide a range of practices as possible, because it's not necessarily a thematic residency, but it's more about trying to create this dialogue, transdisciplinary dialogue. Yeah, under the common goal of what Musterinde is working towards. We also have kind of collaborative residency programs, such as this Nordic Baltic program, which is a thing that we've been working with for several years, between Finland and the Baltic, some Baltic states such as Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and these have been funded residencies that have been able to host practitioners from those countries. And I think the house itself, like I said, is not only is it sort of a more sociological experiment as to how creative and research-based practices can kind of be carried out or operating in a community living sort of sense, but also an experimental area for this post-fossil transition. And it's kind of been the intention has been that from the start, that it will be working as this testing ground. So over these 12 years, we've experimented with wind power, currently running with geothermal heating. For several years, we worked with this compost heating system for water. We currently have an array of somewhere around 30 solar panels, that also in the winter kind of, we have a battery system that in the winter acts as our emergency backup, because this area experiences some of the highest snowfall in Finland. So it can become quite isolated should the power go out because of the cold, or I mean, it can reach -27 sometimes for like several days at a time. So it can really affect how the house operates. We also currently work with heat recovery ventilation, and we have experimented with biogas, bioethanol, and wood gas car, which the wood gas was a whole story in itself. It was driven to Lofoten in Norway as a part of the Lofoten International Art Festival from Musterinde.
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, it's a car that goes on wood, essentially.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
It's
yeah,
like
kind of
running sound.
Yeah.
Rolling sound.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and we currently have an electric car that we use for the shorter distances, I mean, it has a running, like an operating distance of around 275 kilometers per charge. So it is really quite effective. And in the summer, it runs entirely using power from the solar panels that we have.
And before there was also another one, right? Like a small minivan,
yes.
like one of the first electric vehicles. I mean, models in Finland, right? Was a postal car?
Yeah,
right?
a repurposed postal car.
yeah. So I mean, that's it's all kind of for a long time. There's been electric vehicle in the house, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're trying to kind of stay as kind of up to date with the developments of this as possible, because it's I mean, it is, of course, it has its own problematics, but it's the way that this kind of experimentation at the house is carried out is to constantly taking these like smaller steps towards this overall mitigation, just kind of taking small bites to finish the larger plate. So any kind of way that we can work towards that is tested. And so you can see here this quite intricate diagram of how all of the energy systems all interact in the house. So we had this in the winter months, the power comes from the national electricity grid with wind power. We briefly experimented with our own wind turbine that unfortunately the company was hit with some financial issues. So that experiment just goes to show how nearly inextricably tied to these systems we still are.
So I mean, this is an ongoing experimentation between self-sufficiency and kind of interdependency, right? Because now, like we are tied with the Kainu power system, at least, with the bigger wind parks, right? But there are all these like also local systems, and I think that also reflects, but we can come back to it. But also this to the car, as you mentioned, these connections and the actual fact that there is many guests and visitors, and even the association members and so forth. I mean, it's all tied to this larger landscape and modes of transit and transportation. That's one of the key aspects of the work has been the facilitation support of the slow and low carbon travel.
Exactly. Right? Yes. We've been running this initiative for several years of the kind of a slow travel support, where we're aiming to kind of give small pots of funding to be able to compensate for the longer travel time and unfortunate greater expense than the budget airline travel for people who are able to and willing to use these slower and kind of more low carbon modes of transport to reach Mustarinda. And they also are asked to contribute how they've used this travel in the hopes of kind of building this wider network within Europe of these low carbon travel options. So here we can see the solar panel array of the house.
Pretty.
This was in we had to renovate the house 2 years ago. And here is the compost heater. for those of you who were able to see my face at the beginning of the presentation, that's me in the background also doing the hard labor. I'm currently acting as the vice chair of the Mustarinda Association, so I have more administrative work currently at the moment, but it doesn't mean to say that whilst you're here, you do not participate in the physical labor also. So here we are stacking the water heating compost container, and on the right of the photo is a neighbor and Mustarinda Association member Markku Mertinen, who's kind of a key figure in maintaining all of these energy systems, a person of extreme energy and curiosity. for all of these, and a very valuable member also. So the Muster Association also kind of acts having these more outreach or more kind of programmed events and education things. That we have classes for local schools, workshops that are that can be like dyeing, woodworking, we've had some that have kind of been on this interaction between technology and natural phenomena, lectures at universities, seminars, music concerts, some theatre things, and we've been working also with the local forestry commission, on maintaining this nature trail that goes around the old growth forest that Muster is situated right in the middle of. So here we have an art camp for the local children that's kind of exploring ways of seeing and interacting with the forest. It's not just resource based. Just what can you extract from the forest, but what can you how can you visualize these systems that are at work there, and find a place for yourself in them.
And there's, there's like long-term relations with local village schools, actually, with Jerusalem, Mojsijevara, and others. So it's like a constant education program in a way. Not constant, but it's happening year after year.
Muster tries to be as kind of embedded in the locality as much as possible. So rather than acting as this sort of satellite that just has these UFO artists and researchers that drop in and drop out, it tries to kind of interact with it as much as possible, and to actually be an active member of the community here. So working also with invited guests such as lichenologist Laura Voxenma here, who's running a workshop on the lichen in the old growth forest.
There was even lichen festival twice, right?
Several day festival that was exploring lichen in its many forms, also the music event, the tree opera, which was a libretto written on this Eduardo Kohn book, How Forests Think, if I remember the title right. And that was performed 3 years ago with Lithuanian composer and musicians. Muster is not just kind of artistic based. It's also has a great importance on social work and social care. We've organized social work seminars for kind of local actors to be able to explore how communities can be working together, and the trials and responsibilities of social work and social care in today's climate. Muster also has a exhibition program that it hosts both at the house and in galleries elsewhere. That's kind of been ongoing since it started, and it has both Muster members and invited artists and curators that participate. And this is at Hiab in Helsinki. That's from Muster members. We also have a publication, which Mirko, maybe you can talk a bit about.
It embodies this idea of inter and trans and actually post-disciplinary space, where horizontally there is an exchange of around the issues that you're exploring. So there's a new issue starting to be prepared. It's going to come up next year. And I hope you'll see the magazines as well. I guess that, this is really important, is horizontal, exactly horizontal understanding of knowledge and who is a member of community, and how Muster is really involved in this human social community of the house, of the cultural networks, academic networks, and so forth, but also the villages, the villagers, but also all these other communities that live beside, and how all these more the human communities, forests, mires, animals, plants, And so we're continually expanding this understanding of how to be a member of a community there, and what does it mean actually? Because it's the way it's been running for 12 years, but it takes just to become a villager in Finland, in Kainu, but also anywhere else, takes a lifetime or a few. So it's this continuous dialogue with all these neighbors. Yeah. And I think, we're now like, let's kind of look at maybe at the sauna as well. We're now at 20 minutes. So here is the kind of iconic image to maybe kind of.
Yes. So the previous slide there was the list of kind of people who are kind of currently working with and for Mustrunda. And they're kind of all key people in maintaining both the infrastructure and the physical being that Mustrunda is, and kind of all working together in a relatively lateral hierarchy to make sure that, for example, here, clearing the snow from the sauna roof so that it stays upright, because the sauna is kind of quite a key place in Mustrunda, especially in the winters like this. That is, in a 20-minute nutshell, Mustrunda, and I hope you can be a part of something in the future. And thank you very much for having us.